Hey Artnerds! In another video I showed you guys how to refill Copic markers. We came across a couple that are pretty far gone. We're gonna see if we can't bring them back to life today. This video is part of a series on alcohol marker use, care, storage, and tutorials that I've been creating for my local Plaza Art Supply store. If you like what I do and you want to see more of it, please make sure you hit that subscribe button and then click the bell notification so you never miss an update. So we have here a couple of Copic markers that I've kind of let get away from me. We have a Copic wide that never seemed to really seal super well. And it is so far gone that it is kind of crusty. Let's see if I can show you guys what I'm talking about. See that awesome buildup? Let's use the Copic pliers just to scrape some of that off so you guys can see. That is completely dried alcohol ink. And hopefully scraping some of that excess off will help us rejuvenate that. If not, I'm going to have to buy a new Copic wide refill for it. I also have here the same color. It is also looking kind of crusty and dusty. Sounds very dusty. And then we have here the refill ink. And hopefully what we cover today can be used with other refillable markers. And I have a tutorial. It's a very old tutorial, but I have a tutorial on ways you can kind of resuscitate your non-refillable markers. So I'm going to go ahead and get my refill opened up. And I have a post about what's going on with Copic right now, if you've heard some of the news and you want the scoop. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take a look. We're going to try to remove that nib using these Copic wide pliers. But it is pretty dried in there. As I said earlier, I don't think this thing ever had a good seal. This thing is completely dried out. None of it is getting on my hands whatsoever. So what can we do about this? We don't want to put the various ink in while it's like this. I mean, this is completely dried out. So I think what we're going to do is I think we're going to let this soak in rubbing alcohol. Try to reactivate some of the ink, try to get some of the excess ink out. So we're going to set this over to the side. We're going to focus our attention here on V17, which is what we have in here. Let's call this a little refresher video. A while back I did a video on refilling your Copic markers. So I have here just a scrap Post-it pad. Oh, look at that. It is super wrecked. I mean, that's bad. That's like old Crayola you found under the sofa bed. So, what do we have to fix that? Well, fortunately for me, some new Copic brush nibs came in. Trying to clean up, resuscitate my collection. So I'm going to grab those nibs and get right back. So these are Copic Sketch and Chow Super Brush Nibs. Got them from Dick Blick. Just came in the other day. This thing is completely gonzo. We're going to have to replace this nib. I don't think I have any replacement chisel nibs. I am so sorry that it's gotten this bad. That was certainly not what I wanted. So what I'm going to do is I am going to soak both of these markers in an alcohol bath. I guess we're going to be using some rubbing alcohol. So I'm going to grab a bottle of 99% isopropyl alcohol as well as a small airtight container, and I'll see you guys in a minute. Now I want to caveat for those of you cringing in the background that this is not something we would do if these markers hadn't gotten this bad. We are just trying to salvage right now. This is a salvage mission. So I have a small airtight container. It has a rubber gasket. That's how you know it's going to be airtight. And I'm going to remove all of our nibs so that our rubbing alcohol can get all the way inside the marker body. And if you have it handy, you're going to want to grab a couple of pipette pipettes because we're going to try and get some of the alcohol in here just to kind of reactivate it. And if we can resuscitate these markers, it'll take a while before the color is really what it used to be. So I'm going to repeat. Our goal is to resuscitate these markers as much as possible. Not to get the ink useful again, but to get the dry ink out of the marker. And then allow that to dry. And then refill it with our color again. So we're basically trying to get these to maybe like an empty Copic wide or an empty Copic sketch state. Or as close as possible. So I have here a plain, clean, brand new pipette. If you have a syringe, you can Cajun inject your markers. The first thing I want to do is I'm going to fill this Pupperino with alcohol ink. And I want it to run through the other side because we are trying to reactivate the ink inside and remove as much of it as we can. And this is going to evaporate, and we want it to kind of run its course before it evaporates. So I'm starting to see some come out on the other side. We'll just prop it up on its own cap. Does that count as marker cannibalism? I don't know. You tell me. If we can prop it up. Seems like we can. Alright, so it's slightly elevated. Gonna do the same here with our wide. Again, we're using 99% isopropyl alcohol. Now it can't run out the other end. So I'm going to fill it and then I'm going to prop it up open end down so it'll drain back out. Give it a sec to kind of soak in. This is all about experimentation. I've never really done this before. Thought I'd share with you guys. We're like a lab full of mad scientists. Anybody who says art doesn't have science in it is a liar. And it's snapping knocked my capping. And my handing knocked the capping again. Okay. We're going to cover it so the rubbing alcohol doesn't evaporate out. And I guess we're going to let it sit for an hour. So I'm going to go set a timer and we'll check back in on it. Okay, arty friends, it's been about 30 minutes. Let's see if we have any kind of... interesting. Seems to have... There's still some, but we're not getting any of the dye out. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to pour, well, I'm going to fill using the eyedropper and then I'm going to pour some in. Again, if you have a syringe, that could be really great for this. The Copic marker syringe could be good too. I'm putting it right up against the felt inside the marker. And isn't it better that I ruin my art supplies testing these things than you ruin your art supplies? Isn't that why we watch train wrecks like this? I'm going to try to force it through. Oh, there we go. All right. Now we've got some movement. So I guess what we did was we allowed it to pre-activate. So I'm basically going to, for the time being, just kind of filter it through. I don't know how we're going to do this with the wide. I'll set the wide aside over there. I don't know how we're going to do this with the wide because we'd have to uncap it basically, but this is working pretty well with the sketch. So, oh, it backfired on me and went everywhere. Like it's all over my monitor now. Anyway, we're doing this with rubbing alcohol because rubbing alcohol is much cheaper than colorless blender. And it's a solvent for alcohol markers. So it's not necessarily the solvent. Alcohol markers, especially Copic markers, use ethanol alcohol See, now we're getting color. If you want, you can even save what we salvage in a spray bottle and use it as a spray ink, which I may do. It dried for so long, it took a while to reactivate. We want to give it time to drip out as well. So I'm going to end up saving it as a spray ink because I am kind of cheap. Now I'll try it like this, where we're inserting our rubbing alcohol and also allowing it to drip out. What you can also do is you can fill it and then cap it, and that'll at least prevent the alcohol from just evaporating and still leaving all the dry ink inside. Because that's kind of what we're doing right now, is we're reconstituting a really dead marker. Okay, if your goal is mostly just to salvage ink and color, like in my past video, oh wow, did y'all see it back up like that? If your goal is just to salvage color from a dead marker, you're also going to want to saturate the nibs. Okay, I broke my pipette. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let this drain a little bit, replace my pipette, and I'm also going to throw my nibs in. We do eventually want to salvage at least the chisel nib if possible. It's probably not possible, but it is replaceable. And I'm going to go grab a better bulb. All right, fresh new pipettes. So what I'm going to do, is make a mess always. I'm going to soak these. You might want to use a smaller container. You guys can already see, we're staining the barrel of our sketch. That's not really a big deal. B, we are getting a lot of ink out of these. And one of the reasons I'm doing this is I want to get as much of the dry ink out as possible so that we can get accurate color from this marker if possible. And just to keep you guys on top of things, empty Copic sketches are around $5. You can get them for less, you can get them for more, but they're around $5. This one may be as good as it's going to get. I'm going to let these marinate. Add enough just to cover them. We'll see how much ink we can get out of these. Okay, so my nibs have been soaking for a while, and I capped my markers and filled them with ink. We're going to set these aside for a moment and take a look at our nibs. So we're getting a lot of color out of them, and I'm going to replace the brush nib. I'm going to try to reuse both the chisel nibs though, and I want to take a look at what's going on with these markers. So the Copic wide, a lot of liquid in there. That's good though. Hopefully we're reconstituting. Not getting a lot of color out. There it goes. Sort of as it drains. I mean, there's a lot. I don't know if I can... Y'all heard that? Pretty juicy. Could have let it sit for longer though. I'm going to refill it. And then, what about our Copic sketch? Not so much. And it's good. A lot of it's kind of coming out clear now, so I think we've managed to get a lot of the color out of this marker, which is good. It means we're going to be able to refill it. For some reason, rubbing alcohol seems to just eat through my little bulbs on my pipettes. So what I'm looking for is how much color is coming out. It's mostly coming out clear. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to fill it again. I'm going to cap it and let it sit, let it soak, let it kind of reactivate, because inside alcohol markers, just like in water-based markers, there is a felt wick. That is how it holds the alcohol. It's not just liquid inside, it's liquid in a felt wick. So it's a little bit different from, say, acrylic markers. And we're going to resaturate our Copic wide. I want to get a lot of rubbing alcohol in there. And I guess this is probably like a third or fourth reminder, but if we didn't do a salvage operation, these markers were ruined. They'd gone way too far. So the fact that we're doing anything beats doing nothing. So with the nibs, I'm looking to get them lighter in color. This solution may be already too concentrated to pull much out of them. I just ordered some spray bottles. I thought I had some. I did not. So I want to reserve this liquid, not to put into these, but to put in a spray mister and use it later. And you guys can check out some of my tutorials on using spray misters by clicking here. But I don't really want to waste it. So I'm going to have to find another airtight container and just keep cycling out the liquid. And as you guys can see, this is going to generate a lot of alcohol ink. So I'm going to let these markers sit for a while, let the inks marinate for a while. I have this tilted up so that the ink, the rubbing alcohol we've put in, can get to the bottom and reactivate that. We want to fix as much of the wick inside as possible. And then for the Copic sketch, I'm keeping it horizontal because it's open on both ends. I don't want all of the rubbing alcohol to just drain, but I will flip it from time to time. And I think I want to let this sit like this, maybe not on my desktop, but like this overnight. Okay, art nerds, so this has been sitting for about 6 hours. I know I said I would let it sit for 24, but I'm going to show you guys why. We're about to dive in. So you guys can see through the lid of the box, the reclaimed ink is really dark. We're going to, this is not going to be a perfect example, but it'll give you guys an idea. So let's, and it smells very strongly of rubbing alcohol, big surprise. We'll do a quick dot with the original color. And of course, get it all over my hands. Now we're going to take a small sample of the reclaimed ink. Again, it's not going to be accurate, but it'll give you an idea. It's a lot lighter than the V17 Amethyst. I don't know how I managed to just explode that all over the place. And make a mess while I'm in the process. But I wanted to show you guys something else. So, unfortunately, aha, I do. I knew I had another pair of tweezers around. We're going to grab the tweezers out of our ink solution. And you guys can see that a lot of the ink has leached out. Now I need to find that chisel tip. There we go. But they're still pretty dark. We're going to try to get them as back to the original solution as possible, but we want to salvage our ink. So I have here a little airtight jar. What we're going to do is we're going to pour, ooh, good thing I grabbed 2 little airtight jars. We're just going to put our ink in these little jars until my spray bottles come in. If you want to get the ink color darker, you just allow some of the alcohol to evaporate out. Now we're going to go back into our markers, and as you can see, our once very dry felt wick is releasing a lot of old dry ink. We're going to pour that into one of our containers as well. So this method is working. Of course, we're going to have to clean out our caps after. Let's see what we get with this. Oh, this one's almost clean, so this one has come a really long way. And my plan for this, once I get everything kind of cleaned out, is I'm going to allow, I'm either going to refill my markers or I'm going to allow all the alcohol ink, not alcohol ink, alcohol, isopropyl alcohol that's in them to evaporate out and then do a clean refill. So we're trying to clean these as much as we possibly can. So we're going to take our nibs and put them back in because we're trying to clean these as well. We're not going to be able to salvage that one entirely, but I feel pretty good about the other two. And this is a really messy procedure, so I want you guys to watch my tutorial on cleaning up your impermeable surface. I'm going to grab a fresh one since this one is very gross and I don't want to contaminate my isopropyl alcohol bottle. And I'm going to flush my Copic wides again. Now, is this worth it? I don't know. You guys tell me. I find doing this kind of stuff kind of relaxing anyway. Don't like just throwing away art supplies. And then I'm going to give my sketch another flush. And I would say this whole process will consume about half of a bottle. Oh, careful that it doesn't back up and go all over your art desk. I would say it's probably consumed about half a bottle of isopropyl alcohol. And we're getting a lot of dye / alcohol solvent color out of out of our Copic sketch. Drop my pipette in there. Now, fortunately, isopropyl alcohol for a whole big old bottle. And you guys can check the description for links to where I buy mine. I get mine on Amazon. It's really cheap. It's like $3.99. You can probably get it cheaper than that. You can probably get it in bigger bottles than what I'm buying. But it's pretty cheap. And it's kind of a universal solvent when it comes to alcohol markers, Sharpie markers, those sort of things. So it's really handy to have if you like using art markers. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to keep flushing my Copic sketch, getting as much of the color out. I'm going to keep flushing it until it comes out clear. Alright, so I've got it so that it's almost clear coming out. A little bit of tinge of purple to it. So I am going to cap it on one end. Give it a fill of isopropyl alcohol. And cap the other end. And I did the same thing for the purple marker. I let it drain, and then I refilled it again. So they're both fairly heavy. Now, I want to add, again, enough isopropyl alcohol, clean alcohol to this, just to kind of cover the nibs. And we're going to continue to leach that purple out of our nibs. Cover it. There is some evaporation, but covering it and agitating it will help remove a little bit more of the ink from them. And then I'm going to leave my sketch horizontal and prop my wide up. Let that continue to kind of marinate. Okay, art nerds, this has had a chance to sit overnight. I can see that more color has leached from our nibs. I'm going to grab them and just place them off to the side. And then I'm going to let this drain as well. And I think the nibs have probably got as much color out of them as I'm going to be able to get. But I'm going to continue to flush the markers at least as much as possible. I think with the nibs, I'm going to put them in a smaller airtight container. So with the inks we're creating, we can get some more concentrated color. Ooh, that almost spilled. By allowing them to evaporate a little bit. You're going to want to do that in a well-ventilated area. This one I may have to just leave capped. So I need to get another container for the rest of this and continue soaking my markers. Here's the Copic sketch. Nothing's coming out of either end. Alright, I've got another small capped container. Just drain that off into there. We'll leave that open for the time being. Hopefully get a little bit more saturated color. Then I have a small container. If I can get this open, I'm going to put alcohol in it and put the nibs to soak in this. Okay, so we've got our little glass container. I'll move that over to the side. I'm going to put my nibs in it first. And if I haven't mentioned this earlier, you're really going to want to do this kind of stuff over a non-porous craft surface. So maybe you're going to want to use like some plastic sheeting. I'm using an Ink Central craft mat. Alright, with this little container, we're going to have less wastage. And then with this big container, I'm just going to go back to saturating the wick inside. I'm going to let it soak all the way to the bottom, and I'm going to recap it. So I'm going to prop it up while it dries. And I'm leaving, I don't know if you guys can see, but I've got my reclaimed ink. They're open. I'm going to let them evaporate for a while off to the side. I'm going to do another flush of the Copic sketch. I'm just going to do it right into this little container here. And it looks like from that end, it's coming out almost clear. Flip it over, do it again. Still coming out pretty clear, so this one I can allow to dry out, and we can refill it. So put that aside as well and get things cleaned up. Okay, so in the interim, I just resuscitated a Spectra AD alcohol marker, and that went successfully, so I have good feelings about today's procedure. I'm going to drain the alcohol out of our Copic wine, and I'm going to continue rinsing it until it comes out. I don't expect it to come out clear, but I do want it to come out clearer, so sort of like what we saw with the Copic sketch. And I have left this marker intentionally uncapped on both ends. I do want it to maybe not dry out all the way, but I do want it to dry out some, because when we refill it, I want to refill it with our actual color V17 Amethyst. And I don't want it to be too watered down. I want it to be as close as possible. I do think over the lifetime of the marker, we're eventually going to get it almost indistinguishable from the original color. But I do acknowledge that for a while, it's not going to be right. However, I think salvaging the markers is worth that price. I'm going to take a pipette, fill it with our 99% isopropyl alcohol, and do another rinse. And since this is sitting on my desk all day, it's hard for me to just ignore it and go about with my business. If I had a side table I could set this up on, it'd be easier for me to leave these untouched. Okay, I'm also allowing my inks to evaporate out a little bit, trying to condense the color. Cap that, and we want it to drain all the way to the bottom. It does feel fairly heavy, and I'm kind of curious about what colors we have in here and how dark we can get them. So I'm looking for something I can kind of swatch on. I guess this will work. So this is some of the reclaimed color from last night. This is additionally some more. We could mix all of them together in a large container and then re-swatch them, and that is the third. Then we still have our nibs soaking in just plain rubbing alcohol, trying to draw out any dry ink. Wow, that was not supposed to happen like that. Okay, art nerds, it's been about 24 hours since I last checked in with you guys. I cycled the rubbing alcohol out of my Copic wide twice. I think this might be the last time I cycle it. It's not coming out perfectly transparent. I mean, it is transparent, but you know what I mean. Clean, I guess, clear. But as you guys can maybe see, that's pretty dang close. So I'm just going to let this continue to drip out. I've allowed my Copic sketch to kind of dry out for the past day and overnight. So it's going to be ready for filling soon. The Copic wide is going to take longer because I can't let it air from both ends. And if you check out my Reviving Dead Spectrum AD markers, you'll see an example of what I mean when I say that markers have a felt wick inside. So I recommend you guys check that out. Okay, so I'm just gonna want it to drip out as much as possible, because since it's contained, airing it out is going to take a lot longer. And the more we can get the rubbing alcohol out, the more we're going to be able to get a consistent color. So I'm going to set that over to the side. And in a moment, we're going to talk about these nibs. Now, these nibs have been sitting in clean rubbing alcohol for about 24 hours. You can see the water has, the alcohol has leached a lot of the color out of them. So that's good. I do want them to still be moist when we put them in, just so that they'll be more receptive to absorbing our liquid. I thought I had my tweezers handy, but as with all things on my desk, they've disappeared. So I'm going to go look for my tweezers. I'll be right back. Okay. Ha, got it. And I'm just going to pull this out so you guys can see a lot of the color has been leached. Not all, but most. I think that's pretty good considering. So the wide is going to have to drain for a little bit longer. But I think we can go ahead and get started with our Copic sketch reassembly. Okay, so let's take a look at what we've got. We have here our Copic Super Nib. And I apologize for my camera doing weird things. And even though it feels like it's in okay condition, I'm going to replace it anyway. I don't have another chisel though. And it seems like our Copic sketch is completely dry, which is good. So I'm going to replace our not with that though. I'll replace our chisel nib. Switch over to the Copic tweezers. And then we're going to grab our various ink. This went all over me yesterday. So, and we're also going to get our fresh super brush. When I do marker reviews, I pretty much always cite the foam rubber super brush or markers that have something similar to this as being one of my reasons for purchasing these markers. And I'm looking at the thing right now to see if I can find any information about, you know, the contents of the brush. Unfortunately, I do not. So we're just going to set that aside for right now. And we're going to begin filling. And we can see that this end is a lot lighter, so I'm waiting until we get good color saturation. Now if you have the syringe, as I've mentioned in other parts, that would be really handy. I don't. So I'm just dripping in ink, leaving it a little bubble, and wicking extra moisture out of my nib. Haha, okay. Now I'm going to replace my super tip and give the marker a chance to kind of equalize. And after it's done that, we'll give it a chance to kind of wick away extra moisture and test it. So I'm going to lay it horizontally. Okay, it's had a chance to wick. We have a little bit of excess moisture. I'm just going to draw that out gently onto my paper towel. And we're going to do a little bit of testing. So the brush nib was completely new. That's the color we get with the brush nib. The chisel nib was a salvage job. And we're still getting some streaky mottled color. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to put a couple of drops on my nib just to kind of work. I like how it goes the opposite way of where I want it to go, just to kind of help it work into that nib. Give it a chance to soak in. Of course, the best test is not going to be, oh, the color you just applied. It's going to be the color over time. So I'm just kind of trying to work the nib, but it's looking pretty good. Now, really, this is not an accurate test of whether or not this color works. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a little bit of the various ink on a piece of white paper, swatch this, and compare it. Okay, so we have some white paper. We have our various ink refill. This is a particularly leaky bottle. I'm just trying to get like a bead of color onto the paper, and it does not want to do that. Maybe we can try it a different way. It's a little bit better. Alright, it's looking pretty close. Obviously, this is a very saturated area because it just kind of pooled. The chisel nib still needs some work. And remember, again, this was a completely dry marker. The ink had crystallized, gummed up inside the barrel. We removed all the ink. We tried to remove as much of the rubbing alcohol as we could. We salvaged one of the nibs. And now we're just working out the excess ink till we get a close approximation. And those of you who have hung out with me this long are probably wondering, was it worth it? I don't know. Was it worth it? I had fun. Did you have fun? Did you enjoy it? If everybody involved had fun, it's probably worth it. And I think we're getting pretty close. Experimenting, salvaging, maintaining your quality art supplies. That's all important. To me, maintaining your collection that you invested money in is at least as important as knowing whether Ohuhu markers are any good or not. So I don't have any regrets with doing this video. I do want to kind of clean that ink out just because Copic ink has a tendency of drying gummy. And I've spent so much time and effort cleaning out this nib. I don't want it to get poisoned again. So that's one marker down. We still have our Copic wide over here to go. I'm going to let this dry out and overnight and check in with you guys tomorrow. Okay, just a bit more for today. I'm going to put our large chisel nib into the now empty container it had been soaking in. And I'm just going to put a few drops of rubbing alcohol on it. I want to keep it moist because it's going to be, a thirsty brush is often more receptive than a completely bone dry brush. And I feel like the same is probably true for the nibs. Now, this will probably continue to leach out color. I'm not really concerned about that. What's neat about this is I can also just shake it around a bit to reactivate it. Point, though, isn't to leach out more color. It's just to keep it moist while we let our wide dry out. Okay, art nerds, we are on our final day of the Copic reviving. So we are just taking care of the Copic wide now. I need to grab my tweezers. I've got both sets here, and we're going to go ahead and uncap the nib that we've had soaking in isopropyl alcohol. And we've just done that to prevent any of the leftover ink from drying out in it. We're going to remove our nib and just kind of dab it off, wick off some of the excess liquid. The more of the isopropyl alcohol that you leave in it, the longer it's going to take for the actual ink color to kind of run its course through. Set that off to the side. Now we're going to refill our Copic wide that we cleaned out. I've allowed it to evaporate out at least overnight. It's hard to tell if all of the isopropyl alcohol has run out of it. Alright, give it a chance to soak in. I see, and you guys probably can't see, but I see tiny little bubbles as it soaks into the wick. Now we replace our reconstituted nib, and I'm going to store it upside down for a little while to allow the ink to, whoa! Actually, I think I overfilled it, which is fine, just a little bit of wasted ink. So I will dab it off onto our paper towel, allowing it to wick off. And hopefully this will actually force out all of the rubbing alcohol. So we'll get a cleaner version of the color sooner. Now, I still need to clean out my caps and clean the collars. We can do that with just plain rubbing alcohol again. Right, I'll give it a chance, hopefully to kind of equalize and actually soak into the nib, and then we'll check back and see if this is still a problem. Okay, so perhaps our ink has had a chance to equalize. Let's see. Still a little bit drippy. I definitely overfilled it. You guys are not going to make that same mistake though. That was just lazy and carelessness on my part, which, as you guys can see, results in waste. So learn a lesson from my bad example. Alright, hopefully we've got most of it out. I'll just leave it there for just a second while we grab a fresh piece of scrap paper. So other than it being too juicy, the color looks good. Let's compare it with the sketch, looking very similar. Yep. Alright, so other than too juicy, I think we've got it. So I'm going to wick off this excess alcohol ink. I will check back in with you guys once I have that little problem solved, and we're going to clean the caps and the collars, and our markers will be basically as good as new. How awesome is that? Or I'm done quicker than I thought. Okay. So to clean your caps and your collars, it's a very easy procedure. You're going to need some isopropyl alcohol. I have some here in a spray bottle. You're going to need some Q-tips. I will grab those, and you're going to want some paper towels. Alright, so cleanup is really, really easy. I covered this in another video. It's important because if you get too much ink caked up on the inside of your caps and along the collar, it won't form a good seal anymore, and it can also ruin the nib on your marker. So doing this on occasion is just good marker maintenance, and it will make your alcohol marker investment last even longer. There's really no reason, as we have found through this video, there's no reason to throw away your Copic marker. Okay, so I'm going to recap one end. I know this makes you guys super uncomfortable, so I will try to be quick about it. We're going to dip our Q-tip into our rubbing alcohol. We're just going to give it an old quick clean. Go in through the other dry end. Swab it out. Very, very easy. Recap it. Maybe do a little spot cleanup on the outside. Do the same for this end. A little bit like cleaning an ear. Could get some good ear cleaning ASMR Foley from that. Don't worry, I don't clean my ears that rough. And you shouldn't use Q-tips to clean your ears anyway. But we all do. Alright, so now we've got our Copic wide. I'm going to clean the outside first. That's more for aesthetics, but you know. Now we want to clean around the collar. This is the marker that it was capped and it was completely dry, and I don't use this color all that often, so I think this one might have a faulty seal. So we're going to clean it really, really well. Hopefully that'll improve our seal issues. Then we're going to clean the inside of our cap. I'm going to be quick about that. And if you really want to, you can salvage that ink if you wish. But it will add additional time to your cleanup operation. All right. We recap it and finished. Okay, art nerds, so today we figured out that you can indeed salvage dead and dry Copic markers. The materials you're going to need for this salvage are fairly simple. You're going to need a lot of isopropyl alcohol. I'm using 99%. This is just your average rubbing alcohol. You can get it through the link below, or you can get it at your CVS, at your your Walmart, your Walgreens, your Rite Aid. Any of those sort of places will carry this. You are going to want small containers if you wish to salvage some of the ink to use in spray bottles or to use as a mister or to refill a wide. You're going to want Copic tweezers for nib removal, as well as fine point tweezers for just picking up your nibs out of your rubbing alcohol. You're going to want a large container where you can soak your markers. You're going to need to dispose of your rubbing alcohol as well. You're going to need a bunch of paper towels, as well as some Q-tips if you do desire to clean up your markers afterwards. If you ruined your brush tip as I did, you're also going to need some spare super brush nibs or whatever nib design for the brush in, because they do make others that will fit that you wish to use. You'll need those as well. And then of course you're going to need some scrap paper, a lot of time, and a lot of patience, but it can be done. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you guys again really soon with another hopefully helpful art video. I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you are looking to revive disposable alcohol markers, I've got 2 videos for you guys as well. We have an old Iron Lock Striker video, and then we have an upcoming Chart Pack Spectra AD revival video that you guys should check out. Thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate you hanging out with me. And if you are not a subscriber and you like what I do, make sure you hit the subscribe button and click the bell notification so you never miss an update. Alright guys, I will see you again later. Bye guys!